Today in crypto, Bitcoin could be ready for a massive parabolic move before we finish 2020 off. A move which could take us to a new all-time high and will inevitably set in motion the market momentum that we need to reach a new cycle peak in late 2021 or early 2022. Bitcoin, of course, has a history of making really big, dramatic moves, and right now I feel like we are in that perfect storm kind of situation, which could see Bitcoin have a big breakout soon. My name is Lark, and this is where you subscribe for all of the hottest and of course all of the latest happening out here in the wild land of crypto. By the way, every single week, me and my talented team of researchers and analysts send out Wealth Mastery, a comprehensive crypto investor report covering really everything that you need to know. We've got Bitcoin analysis, altcoin analysis, token sales, upcoming airdrops, the latest news and top upcoming events, DeFi tutorials, an in-depth altcoin fundamental report, an AMA with an industry leader, portfolio tips, examining top trends, and so much more beyond that. So if you are serious about investing in cryptocurrency, then this is the weekly report that will help keep you ahead of the curve in this fast moving market. You can click on the link down below in the description to learn more about Wealth Mastery. Okay, so with that being said, let's get into today's topic. I believe that Bitcoin right now is on the verge of a massive parabolic move. Now, it may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen next week, but it's coming. We really right now have this perfect storm of events happening that is likely to drive the price of Bitcoin sky high, assuming, of course, we don't have some crazy black swan event come up. Could always happen, but otherwise, we're going to the moon, guys. Bitcoin has shown incredible resilience recently with all of the FUD floating around. So it's everything from the exchange hacks to the macro stuff. And while it may seem hard to believe for the survivors of the bear market that we're likely now on the cusp of a spectacular market rally for Bitcoin and of course the wider crypto market behind it, it's likely coming. So let's look at some charts here first to understand kind of where we are in this cycle. So we are now 161 days out from the 2020 Bitcoin halving. So back in 2016, 161 days post-halving was just days before a massive 50% Bitcoin rally. But that rally, while dramatic, did not actually take us over the previous all-time high of $1,218. No, it took actually 234 days after the last halving to finally break over into a new all-time high. That, by the way, was a 73% rally from the 161-day mark, which is where we are right now. And it only broke over that all-time high for a brief moment before retracing back down. Of course, many people who have been holding bags from that top back in the day probably exited the market. Crazy guys, but that happened. Then, of course, from the time that Bitcoin broke its previous high until it hit $20,000, which is the new all-time high, it took 294 more days and saw a rise of 1,500%. Now, we may be right now on the cusp of that kind of breakout to a new high, 234 days post the 2020 halving. That's going to be December 31st. So how much would Bitcoin need to rise to hit a new all-time high of just above the previous all-time high? Well, 73%, which happens to be the same percentage rally that happened in 2016, 161 days after the halving. Funny coincidence, isn't it? In case you have forgotten as well, Bitcoin is easily capable of these kinds of just mega melt-your-face kind of rallies in very, very short amounts of time. It's happened many times before, and it's going to happen again. This kind of rally, it seems very plausible to me. In fact, it's uncanny how similar the post-halving price action is playing out right now. And of course, just for an extra bit of hopium in the bongs here, it took 524 days after the last halving to hit a new cycle high at $20,000. Such a move from breaking the previous high to a new high could potentially see Bitcoin rally to $335,000 a coin on October 17th, 2021. Sounds insane, sounds impossible. Well, percentage-wise, those are the exact gains that happened in the last bull market. So everybody said it was crazy back then. And look what happened. Obviously, history does not repeat. That's just for fun, those numbers, but it does prove that Bitcoin is capable of just a dramatically big breakout as money comes flooding in. Now, we could be facing, of course, a situation of diminishing returns for this cycle. Maybe this cycle is going to take longer to play out. Maybe we're not going to peak until early 2022 or something like that. That's a possibility. Maybe the top's not going to be as high. Maybe we only hit $200,000 or we only hit $150,000. But I really feel that big things are about to happen in the market. The picture's coming together and it looks very, very bullish, especially when we have all these factors coming together right now that's really reinforce what we're seeing at the technical level. Now, first, let's look at a few of the on-chain metrics. So, of course, more than 63% of all Bitcoin has not moved in over a year, indicating that the serious Bitcoin hodlers have a basically zero intention of selling their Bitcoin for mere $11,500. Come on! They're waiting for how much higher prices. The amount of Bitcoin in exchanges has been in steady decline all year long, meaning that Bitcoin is being bought and it's being taken out of exchanges and sent to cold wallets for long-term storage. That is definitely bullish to see. The amount of Bitcoin being held by miners is also in steady decline, meaning that miners, they're starting to run out of ammunition, which means that it's reducing that constant sell pressure for miners on the market. The number of Bitcoin addresses with non-zero balances is over 31 million. Addresses with more than 0.1 Bitcoin, now over 3 million addresses, and addresses with one or more Bitcoin, now over 800,000. While, of course, retail is obviously going to be part of this Bitcoin rally, it's my belief that this will be the bull market where institutional money really starts adopting Bitcoin as a reserve asset, and it's honestly starting to happen right now. Here's the proof. Grayscale just had a record third quarter with more than $1 billion in total inflows, around 70% of which was into Bitcoin. And who are Grayscale's customers? Primarily institutions. Around 80% of their clients are institutions. Of that, it's mostly hedge funds and private funds, meaning that institutional players in Q3 of this year invested at least $600 million into Bitcoin via the Grayscale Trust. By the way, fun fact, Grayscale alone bought the equivalent of 77% of all of the newly mined Bitcoin in Q3, which is incredibly bullish. But Grayscale is not the only vehicle out there offering institutional exposure to Bitcoin. There are many now, in fact. For example, the New York Digital Investment Group now has nearly $1 billion in Bitcoin held on behalf of clients investing in their Bitcoin funds. Wilshire Phoenix is another company which will be launching here in the not so distant future. Basically a direct competitor to Grayscale and their products, allowing, of course, another on-ramp for getting institutions to bring their money into Bitcoin. And then obviously there's all the private funds and the family offices that are buying Bitcoin directly, either OTC or actually on exchanges, and then simply taking it and storing it either themselves or putting it with a custodian like Coinbase or Gemini. It's happening a lot more than we realize. We just don't really have solid numbers on how much that is happening. The big story of 2020 obviously has been that two publicly traded companies bought Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. There are now in total 12 publicly traded companies holding Bitcoin on their balance sheets, but 10 of those companies, they're, like Bitcoin related companies, like miners, for example, or they're investment companies like Galaxy Digital. So they've got Bitcoin, but they're an investment company, so it's a broader perspective here. No. I think the $500 million of the Bitcoin that was bought by MicroStrategy and by Square, it's a really, really big deal because Bitcoin's not their business. They actually traded their cash reserves in for Bitcoin as a reserve asset because of the macro picture that we see playing out with the economy right now. So just taking the US as an example, record debt is now just the norm. It's the case for many economies, of course, but the US is definitely the worst offender with like $27 trillion in debt. That's just, it's unpayable. The servicing of the debt's going to become more than a GDP in a few years. Central banks have totally lost control of the situation with inflation as well. which is predicted to go as high as 10% by some analysts in the next few years in the USA. Interest rates are already negative in many major economies like Europe and Japan. The USA likely to see them as well. Best case scenario for the USA is going to be zero rates or near zero rates, which again, not super awesome, because US companies right now sitting on trillions of cash. They're staring down this fate of negative rates, high inflation. It's not going to be good. And their money is going to start moving around and into different investments. In fact, I think it's going to be grossly negligent for some of these companies to not lessen their dollar exposure. Some of that money, it is going to come into Bitcoin. The real risk, in my opinion, with Bitcoin actually doesn't come from owning Bitcoin. On the contrary, the real risk is not owning any Bitcoin. Anyway, those of course are just my 2 Satoshis. Your question for today: do you think that Bitcoin can hit over $20,000 by the end of the year? Or is that just a little bit too much hopium in my bong today? Let me know down below in the comment section, guys. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Long live the blockchain, and peace out till next time.